Today we're going to be covering exercises for your hip adductors, really underrated muscle groups within the body. They're going to be used for ambulation, for walking, your standing, different pelvic control exercises to support your compound lifts, your squats, your lunges. We'll be covering some ground-based activities, some other activities you can load with any kind of free weights. Let's get started. One of the best exercises we can do to start for our hip adductors is going to be the side lying hip adduction, or these leg lifts. A few considerations when setting up. Hips are going to be stacked. It's not going to be as much of an isolated exercise if I stay up onto my elbow underneath the shoulder like I would for any kind of a side plank variation. The legs can start stacked like you would for a side plank. We're going to be engaged in this bottom leg. Is going to be our working leg here. My top leg can come with the foot flat on the ground, either in front or behind the leg. See wherever we want to for stability. One of the main things to look out for is trying not to swing the leg for momentum. I'm going to be lifting this bottom leg off the ground. And my hips aren't going to fall forward or backwards. They'll generally have a tendency to want to fall backwards as we're engaged in this movement. We may have a little bit more stability by staying in front. This will be a little bit more manageable. We just have to watch now that we're limited by contact with the other leg. If I can lift my leg high enough to be in contact with the other leg, then I'll want to have that leg on the back side there. Core is going to be engaged, hips are stacked. That bottom leg is going to be straight at the knee, and we're getting into these leg lifts here. So same thing, hips are still staying stacked and rolled forward. We're getting into these lifts. It's a brief pause to the top of the movement just to feel those adductors engaged a little bit more. We want to keep that leg straight at the knee. Toes will be pulled up towards the shins. To feel that in the adductors even more, coming into the side lying position, I can position a block or a mat underneath the head, or use my forearms to relax, or go straight onto the ground. I'm going to use my forearm to relax. Now my hips are even in a little bit more contact to the ground. Now my torso, my obliques, everything is going to be supported. Hands can be free to make it a little bit more challenging for balance and stability with the hips, or we can even stabilize with that hand against the ground. I can still come up into those lifts and hold. Or we can go free arm supporting with that same relaxed position from the bottom. High volume for those exercise, anywhere 3 sets, anywhere from 10 to 15 repetitions per side. The seated adductor ball squeeze is a great adductor exercise. It can be used either for rehab, some isolation. It's great for core activation as well. Isometric activity where we're just being able to feel what it's like to engage those adductors. One of the more important parts will just be finding something that can support my body weight where I'm seated, but I'm going to be seated in a position where I'm going to be at 90 degrees at the hip and the knee. If I don't have a ball, a small stability ball, a small like soccer ball, anything else to kind of work off of, you can use a foam block or anything else to squeeze between the legs as well. It's important that when we set this up that we're putting it up in between the adductors and we're keeping our feet underneath the knees. We can brace for support, hands supported, or just hands going to be free, keeping strong active arms. Shoulders are staying above the hips, and I'm trying to squeeze the ball. As I'm engaging in the ball, we'll feel those adductors kind of pull in. You'll see the knees kind of come in as we're engaged in that intensity. We can hold for 3 to 5 seconds, relax, take that intensity off. We can increase that intensity by holding for 10, 20 plus seconds. That's another way to kind of engage the intensity for that. The larger ball will be a little bit more easier, a little bit more accessible. You can use a smaller ball to increase the challenge for that exercise as well. The seated ball squeeze for the adductors can also be performed with a partner as well. So on top of just having that intensity for that 3 to 5 second hold to start off with, upwards of 10 to 20, you can engage in that same hold. The ball is still placed in that same spot. Shoulders going to be over top of the hips. Still trying to squeeze that, still inhale, still less embracing the core. Being able to breathe while we're engaged in that hold. You can have someone come over and try to pull the ball away, try and push the ball down. To make sure that you're really squeezing the life out of that thing can be another way to really engage that intensity. It can add a little bit more perturbation or support of that as well, because they can, on top of trying to push and pull that off, they can try and pull you into either direction as well to make sure that, do I have good squeeze with both legs evenly, or is one contributing a little more? Give that one a try. Standing either banded or cable for the hip adduction. We'll start off with the banded option. Start off with something a little bit lighter. The band's going to be positioned just over top on the other side of the ankle. It's going to be my inside leg. So against the weight stack, or against wherever the band is going to be tied off, will be my inside leg for the working. I want to move out far enough where I have tension to start off with. I don't want to start too close where when I come in, the band could either fall off or I have no tension at the top. So one of the first things I'll do is I'll walk out for that stability and support. Have something close to you to start off with. It could be a table, a chair, whatever you have access to. Use the parallel bar here just to stand off for stability. I'm going to slowly lift this leg off the ground. As I do so, I don't want to shift my balance. Watch that my hips aren't going to hinge back. So we're still maintaining that proper position here at our pelvis. This leg is going to lift off here. I can shorten that range of motion to be able to let that band. I'm just going to move out a little bit further so I have tension at the top. This is going to pull out and I don't want to shift that weight. So I can just hold on with a couple fingertips, just knowing that this is there, trying not to sway off onto the side. So I'm still keeping that stacked position. I can stop when I draw back under into that midline, or I can take a small step back and have this leg cross onto the other side, squeezing the adductors on the inside to that top. That toes are still pulled up. I'm keeping that leg engaged. I don't want to come into a position where that knee is going to bend a little bit. As I do that, my hip flexors are going to take on a little bit of that load. So this pelvis stability here is going to be really big for that one as I'm coming across. We want the reps to be a little bit longer for this one, that same 10, 12, 15 repetitions. As I'm drawing across, that same squeeze just to feel those adductors engage. For a little bit more balance and stability, I can go free, supporting. Now this leg and this glute on my supporting leg on my right side has to work that much harder as this comes across. Now it becomes a little bit more instability and a little more core dominant. So if you really want to focus on that squeeze and the contraction for the adductors, I'd recommend holding on to something to start off with. If you want to get a little bit more out of it, challenge that core a little bit more, you can take that support away. For our ankle cuff version, one of the things we may want to do is to elevate my base leg here so that just enough to be off onto the edge so that when I'm coming around, I'll be in a tension now where I can come across without worrying about hitting the ground. So that back leg is still going to be back. I can still get that tension, that full squeeze in on the adductors. One of the problems that could happen, whether I'm going supported or unsupported, is that when I'm drawing across, we're limited by my ankle coming into contact a little bit more than I am with the resistance band. So it's hard to cross in front of that foot without maintaining stability or touching down with my foot. So that just gives me a little bit more elevation so that my working leg can stay above the ground there the whole time. Ankle cup version again can still be done in that same range, going unsupported as well. Touching down in between repetitions as you need to. The lateral lunge is one of the best ways that we can load up to strengthen our adductors. We can start off with body weight positioning. We can load with a dumbbell or kettlebell into a goblet position, as well as loading up with a barbell, safety bar, or whatever else you have access to. I want to step out wider than shoulder width, maybe about 1.5 times my shoulder width position. I'm going to have my toes pointed outwards just to have the hips a little bit more open. One of the better things to kind of think about this is that I'm still starting off into that lateral position by starting off with a bit of a slight hinge, because I'm still want to make this into a squat. So the button hips need to come back. As I'm doing that, we're going to be limited in this position by a little bit more of our hip and ankle mobility. So ease into whatever range of motion looks right for you. As long as we're coming down and back, if that's going to be a little bit higher and the hip's not going to be in line with that knee, that's okay, because I still have my knees up over the toes. The button hips are still back. If we're able to get a little bit more range of motion, we can push down and back. I want to still keep my chest and shoulders up and tall, try not to collapse. My long leg here is staying locked out at the knee. That's what's going to work those adductors, the glutes, the hips, quads are firing on this right side. I'm pushing back up into that tall straddle position. Rep range can look very, very different for anybody through this. It could be 6 reps a side. It could be upwards of 12 to 15, depending on how you want to load it. As we're working this off, it's going to be important to still, I'll show you from the side with the load here. Still getting the butt and the hips back. So If I just go side to side here, there's gonna be a lot of knee force, even though I'm moving in a lateral direction. So that hinge I mentioned at the start, that button the hips back, just allows me to be into a position from that bottom part of that lateral split squat where it wouldn't look too different if I stepped in with that long leg than my regular goblet squat. The sumo deadlift. What separates the sumo deadlift from a traditional deadlift will be how wide we position our feet. That's what's going to be able to prioritize the training our adductors a lot more. So we can do this with a kettlebell, we can do this with a barbell, any other kind of free weight. We're going to be positioning our body where the ankles are in line with the horns, the side handles of my kettlebell here. So I'm still in a position wider than I would be, not too far out as it was for the lateral split squats, a little bit more contained. Starting off in more of a beginner position for this, one of the things that we need to focus on is that hip, knee, and ankle alignment. Focusing on the tempo part of that movement, we can have a tendency to drop up and down very quickly, focusing more instead on pulling yourself down and pushing back up to the feet, full control, hips and glutes forward, locking up that movement in this tall straddle position here. For more of an advanced version, we can work into more being able to load it heavier and moving it very powerfully. The barbell may be more of an accessible option for that, depending on what you have available for you for this. So you can still reach down. Now I'm a little bit more forward with this lean, but we still want our shoulders and chest tall over top of the hips. I'm just doing that to initially lower down so I can wedge myself into the kettlebell here. One thing to look out for, especially with the kettlebell or the barbell, is we'll have a tendency to collapse in towards the weight here. So being able to pull up with the hands to take that tension off. So now I'll be facing, chest and shoulders are going to be up and tall. Keep that same tension on the handle. Get that separation so that my back's going to be engaged. We're tall, keeping that splay on the ground. Knees, hips out. Inhale, brace. Exhale to the top, getting that full lockout position in that straddle. And then again, controlling that tension down to keep that pull, keep that stack. That kettlebell will want to carry us forward. I reach that same position at the bottom. Ankles aligned to the top. Still keeping that pull in to the kettlebell from the top of that position. Next up, we have the towel or slider for the adduction exercise. Depending on what you have available to you, or your surface at home, it's hardware, it's laminate. You could do it at home in a pair of socks, depending on what you have available. I'm just on a plexiglass slide board here with a hockey sock. If you have floor sliders on turf, could also work as well. Positioning for this one, we'll be in a similar position to the bottom of our lateral lunge or that lateral split squat position. So when this leg is coming out, we're in that bottom position. So I want to be able to drag. I'm pushing down on my long leg to come back up into that position standing. Watching that I'm not pushing off of my base leg here, more so of my weight will be on my left side. So I'm not pushing off that left side as much to come up. A way to make this a little bit more advanced or challenging could just be any kind of a loaded option for us, whether we're talking weighted vests, dumbbells, kettlebells, just something that we can load either in that goblet or maybe a low hang position, depending on what you can hang on to. As I'm drawing off at the bottom as well to make this more intense and try and take this leg out and be like, hey, I feel like I'm using this leg a lot to come up. I can slide into this position down here the whole time and finish off in this low kind of half or full squat position. So I'm dragging that out slowly, keeping that same hip knee alignment, but I'm pulling back into the bottom here. It can be a way to prioritize that adductor on that working leg just a little bit more. Next up, we have the Copenhagen plank or side adductor plank. This is going to be the most core focus of our adductor exercises, but still accessible. We have some beginner, some intermediate, and some advanced options. We're going to be positioning off of either off of the elbow for a low plank or off the hand for that high plank position. Starting off to be a little more easier. Risers, a bench, whatever you have available, but we're going to try and be in a nice stacked height for the position. As I'm coming around, I want this knee to be bent, so my adductors are still going to be supported off. Elbow will be in line underneath my shoulder here. My leg is just going to be tucked underneath the risers here. But as I'm pushing up with that bottom knee with the adductors, and I'm driving down with that elbow to maintain that position. We'll notice a nice stack here, my ear, shoulder, hip, and knee. I want to watch that the hips aren't pulling backwards, or I'm not dropping down towards the ground. and we'll be able to hold and maintain that position here. Starting off with anything outside of 10 to 30 seconds is going to be very challenging to maintain, but that knee supported one will be a great option for accessibility for that. The Copenhagen can be progressed to work into like a hip flexor drive, a hip tap for more of a dynamic aspect. It could be a lot more challenging with where we go with that. You can also load with a weight on that top leg as well. For more of the challenging option, we can just have that pivot point, instead of it being off the knee, we can have it off of the foot. So now I'll have to position myself further away from my platform, further away from the bench, whatever I'm using. We'll get a better angle of what my bottom leg is doing here. So I'll set up in that same stacked position here. So both legs, I still want to keep that same stacked position with what I mentioned with the ears, shoulders, hips, knees, toes. I want to pull the toes so that we're still in that active stance here. I'll start off with just bridging off from that top leg and off that bottom arm before bringing that bottom leg off and locking everything in place here. I want to watch that I'm not going to have too much separation here. This is going to place a little bit too much strain. So I still want to keep those legs as close as I can in that same position, maintaining that same vertical stack. Again, this will be more of an advanced option. That'll be challenging to hold off as well, but the Copenhagen can definitely still be for everybody. How often should I train my adductors? 2 to 3 times a week will be good for most people depending on their goals and frequency of training, whether it's going to be full body focused or more of a lower body focused training program. Anything can be adjusted. You may want to start off with 2 times a week for better kind of balance, postural control, or think about that as more of a stabilizer type movements. You may want to train your adductors 3 times a week to be a little bit more movement specific and or sport specific depending on where you want to take that. When should you include adductor into your training? It can be used as a bit of a pre-activation tool prior to some of those more compound lifts. It can try to help stabilize the pelvis and establish a little bit more control. So normally it'd be done with a little bit more high rep, high frequency in terms of the number of reps you're going to be doing. The exercises could be the either seated adductor squeeze. Maybe you're getting into either a seated or a side lying adductor type position as well, trying to just stabilize the pelvis, get that control pre-activation to try and help warm up the glutes so that those compound lifts, those squats and those lunges be a little bit more prepared for you working in. Adductor training is both an assistive exercises, whether it's lower body or full body focused. You can add them either at the end of a session or as a superset during your session. Exercises that could be included could be that slider adduction there. Maybe it's the cable, standing, supported or unsupported for that adduction exercise, as well as Copenhagen planks. Being able to establish that in can just try to help reinforce that kind of joint stability and make sure that you're adequately working those kind of stabilizing muscle groups so that those compound lifts, those squats and those lunges that we talked about earlier, you're going to get the best out of those movements. Lastly, adductor training can be used as more of that core stability drill as well, more specific to Copenhagen planks, but also for that ground-based work where you're going for that foot-supported adductor side-lying leg raise as well. So that kind of core stability that adductor training can provide a ton of activation for that as well.